Before we bring it over to Caleb, I'd like to say a few words about Archipelago of Design. We have our co-president here, Philippe Beaulieu-Brassard, and AOD, as you know here, who are here today, is an independent network, international network that brings together professionals, practitioners, academics, and researchers from across NATO members and partners who are interested in empowering their teams with systems thinking, design theory, and foresight. And AOD develops transformative games through co-design. And a little bit about AOD in numbers. We have 56 members, 7 core staff, 2 core presidents, and 15 board members who, help us keep current and keep connected. And the purpose of these campfires is really to learn from one another. And thank you. You can go to the next slide, Caleb. It says just a few more words. We empower leaders to reframe with their team, assisted by foresight, design thinking, and systems thinking. And as we empower leaders, we also empower ourselves through this sharing and learning that we do through the campfire. And all of our presenters are volunteers, and Caleb has presented before. And so I'm very happy to introduce him because he's told me a little bit about what he's talking about, which relates to improving communication and collaboration in bureaucracies. And you can close the slide now, Caleb. And it relates to my own research in social capital, which I had an opportunity to leverage in some AOD research with the CAF recently. So Caleb's going to run the show. You have some slides, Caleb, and you'll be doing some interactive Q&A. And at the end, I'll come back with some closing comments and more information about membership in AOD and some of the other upcoming events. Over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much for the introduction. My name's Caleb. I did 20 years in the Army, and my last role is I worked as the Chief Initiatives Group for the Army commander at the time, which was General Air. And actually, this is actually why I care about this problem that I'm talking about today, which is how to make connections, how to communicate, how to network, how to collaborate in complex bureaucracies. It was a problem that I always used to have when I worked in the Chief Initiatives Group or Chief Action Group cell, is you'd be working on a problem for like 6 months, and then you'd work out someone else is already doing the same thing, like on the other part of the organization. And so every team in public service sometimes feels like they're unique. They're the only ones that ever do what they're doing. But then you quickly work out that someone else is actually doing the exact same thing. And when I got out of the Army for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been interacting a lot with public servants. And then I work out that I'd go into conversations and they would say, "Hey, I'm working on this," and I would always be like, "Have you met Tom? Have you met Michael? Have you met Sarah? Have you met?" Because they're all doing the exact same thing. And so, today I'm just kind of ruminating with ideas on like, how do I make this better? And I've been doing a little bit of research that might help. And what I'm hoping that you go away with is a few ideas of like, are we doing this right? Are we collaborating right? Do we have the right community of practice? Do we have the right size? Do we have the right kind of organization for our networks? Or does it make sense? Off the top, obviously the best way to collaborate is with organizations that are like you or with people that are like you. And so there's circles that go larger and larger and larger. Your team, your DG, your department, your government, your country. The closer you are to the middle of that circle, the faster you can just copy the work that they're doing and then reuse it as well, so you can go faster. And so I'm hoping that I can help people find those connections as we go forward. And so what we also don't want to have, and when you see it, and I'm going to use a couple examples, is there's these community of practices where you show up every 2 weeks and there's 200 people on a call and it's overwhelming. It's almost too much collaboration theater that some people call it, which is also, it's too much. And so how do you have a focused engagement to get what each person needs so that you can be successful? And there's a bit of a design to it, and so you'll have to do it on your own, and I can help you if you want to go for a coffee and a chin wag about it. But this is some of the stuff that I'm working on that might be useful for you. So I'm going to share my screen, if that allows me. Here we go. I just did it once. There you go. And there we go. Okay, so my first question, what I want everyone to do is to just put it into the chat, and don't push enter yet, but it's just to get a bit of a feel from the group, like what's the largest event or community that you've been part of where you've asked, like, who am I supposed to be talking to in here? And while everyone's thinking about it and putting it into the chat and getting ready, don't push enter yet. I'll give an example from myself. I just went to an event last week in San Diego, and they had a meet and greet to kind of open it up on Sunday night, and there was 1,000 people on a rooftop, and there was no coordination or anything. It was just 1,000 people running around, and I literally walked into and I'm like, who am I going to talk to here? Like, what is this going to happen? And so I'd be interested to see what everyone's thinking, and like what problems they've seen, or what kind of overwhelming engagements they've seen. So if everyone could, if they could push enter, and we'll see what people come up with.
I don't think we have the chat function, Caleb, so we can perhaps just do it vocally. Of course, you can always use the Discord channel. For those who are on the Discord, we have a monthly Campfire channel that is open to all human beings. But I think for now, better to do it vocally. Sorry about that.
That's awesome. It's cool. I'd like to be throwing those loops in the conversation. Okay. Well, but
yeah, maybe there's something we can do about the chat, because I thought I was panicking. I thought I was the only one who didn't have the chat, but I understand it's all of us. So maybe there's something that can be done.
Okay. Well, that's it happens. I mean, does someone want to jump on and just share by voice then? Thank you, Eric, for doing me a solid.
I'll put the hand up there.
Yeah.
So, quick anecdote. So, back when I was a young captain, I heard the biggest simulation conference in the military, or even in the world, was ITSEC. If anyone who's involved with capability development heard about that, it's IITSCC, and it's in Orlando. Anyways, I went to this conference, new captain in there. I'm leading a portfolio, a project of $12.5 million R&D project. I'm all excited. I go there. And I had some direction, but I tried to figure it out. What I was astonished is I met dozens and dozens of Canadians who were there doing the same thing as me. And I was like, as anyone knows me, I put my hand, hey, we should work better together. So I worked with a senior light colonel who was there from the Army. I said, should we have a Canadians meeting? And so I organized for that light colonel a Canadians gathering on site one of the days, and we used, text messages or emails, DWAN emails back then. But I was like, what? That was my first indicator back in 07 or 06 or 05, I think, that, we got to do it better. And it's still a problem that persists today, where we have government officials going places and there's no practical collaboration forum to say who else is working on this. So anyways, that was my one anecdote that I'm afraid probably persists today.
Yeah, it totally does. Thanks very much, Eric. That's a great example. And it could be, that's just a vehicle to explain like an event, an association, a community of practice, or anything. Like if you don't come in prepared, you're just going to get overwhelmed, and it's just not going to add the value that you're looking for. I saw one other hand up, but it got taken down. So I'll just, unless, did it get taken down?
It was Matt. Matt had something to say.
Matt, you have another example as well?
Hi, Caleb. I do. It was both in service and since I left. Believe it or not, we realized about 1.5 years ago, I realized that there hadn't been a meeting where we talked about all of GeoInt and the CAF in recent memory. We would have MC talking in the old silo, CJOC talking in the old silo, like so many organizations, but they're all using similar tools. They're all using similar ways. They're all trying to do more and more of the same thing. Essentially, absolutely no collaboration. And I am not sure exactly yet. I'm curious of your opinion, and maybe we need to go for a coffee. But what was the exact cause of that? But interestingly, it's industry that took a lead in getting them together to some degree.
No, perfect. And, John, do you have another example?
Yeah, and I hope it doesn't go contrary to your point that I 100% believe and support in, but as you know me, I tend to go against the flow of the stream. I would submit that the actual size of the group at a particular conference or meeting obviously has an impact, but it isn't the singular factor. So I have been to many smaller, while I was in NATO, working with industry. You go to these sort of joint sort of conferences sponsored by Airbus or whoever else. And some of these groups were as small as 30 or 40 people from various industries and other NATO militaries. And it still took a solid 2 out of the 4-day conference to figure out who was actually there. Obviously, when you go to the conference title page, they'll have, Sylvie is presenting on X and Y, Mackenzie's presenting on Z and, whatever. So you kind of have that idea, but often those aren't the real people that you want to chat with. And it still takes, even though it's a couple dozen people, it takes a couple coffees that first day, figure out who's there, etc. So I think the size of the group obviously can make it more complicated, but similar problems are even with a very small size of group, depending on if you're going in and you don't know a lot of the people beforehand. Over.
Yeah. No, that's actually perfect, and that actually matches right into my next slide. So thanks very much, John. How do you have flows organized? Like everyone, I think it's because before I go right into answering my own question, just to give a bit of a history for some of those conferences and some of those associations, that's how they make their funding. And so like the bigger the event, the more sponsors come in, the more money they can do, the more affordable or profitable the event can have. So just so you can give a bit of perspective, people sometimes start chasing the numbers and chasing the people, but that's not always the best way to actually network or have communities of practice or have engagements. And there's 2 outcomes based on some of the events that we just talked about here. Thanks everyone for participating. You could have an event for 200 people. So one outcome, 200 person event, and I guess kind of like what Eric was talking about there, although he actually took the bull by the horns, but you maybe you'd meet 2 people by luck in that 2 hours. Maybe you'd follow up with them afterwards. That would be the so what out of that conference or that engagement or that MS Teams call with 200 people on it. It's not focused, and it's not at the right number of people. It's almost overwhelming. What you would hope to have if you went to that 200 person event or conference or MS Teams call is what you actually want to do is you want to have, before you even show up, you want to have probably 3 people that have the same interests as you or working on the same thing as you, so that you're meeting them at that event to focus in on have that engagement with them. And you can talk to other people as well, or you can, or maybe, hopefully what you would hope to do is you'd meet those 3 people, and those 3 people would say, yeah, we're working on the same thing, but actually you should also talk to this other person I know. That would make more value. And what you'd also want to have, it's kind of following what you're saying there, John, is you want more of a really detailed 10-person working group for that 2 hours. Maybe you'd want to have 1 hour or half an hour where you're really working on a problem or interest that everyone's interested in. And even though you're not going to solve that problem in that working group, it's almost impossible. But what you would see is what the diverse ideas are around this problem, who's working on this problem, and then who you can leverage and talk to afterwards. And see, hopefully you'd be able to walk away with 6 people that you'd be able to talk to later. And so, this is kind of what I'm hoping people can see as outcomes that you can have as you go forward. And so, I was expecting chat to be working here, and my bad. But my question out to everyone is what size should your network be? So everyone's been told in the public service or in anywhere, hey, you should go network. You should go talk to everybody and build out your network. But what does that actually mean? So, can some people just put on the voice, turn off the mic, and just yell out what they think the size of the network should be? It would have been easier.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, exactly. Some people, organizations will try and throw as many numbers or as many people as they can into an association or into a phone call. You'll go into working groups that have 70 people on the working group, and it becomes overwhelming. And so you have to work out it depends. What's the size that I need my network to be? And it's actually broken down. Your network can only be so large, as the theory goes, based on your trust and relationships you have with certain people. And so there's a number out there. It's called Dunbar's number. Highly recommend researching it and just Googling it if you want. A few books have actually been written about this number, one of them being Tribe, which is fantastic, by Junker. And it really talks about, like, you know, with social media or with LinkedIn or with communities of practice across government, sometimes you'll have thousands and thousands of people that you're connected to or a part of a community, but you can't actually handle that. And so there's what Dunbar would recommend, and based on like neuroscience of like how much a brain can actually handle, but then also based on statistics and society, he's come up with these guidelines of how many people you could probably have in your network. So it's 5 people are usually loved ones. 15 people are usually good friends. Like you'll have a few people from maybe university or college or other organizations, your coworkers. 50 is friends. 150 are meaningful contacts that you could probably draw upon. Or if you showed up to a location or coffee or a beer and you saw them there, you'd probably feel quite comfortable talking to them. 500 would be acquaintances, and then 1,500 are people that you can recognize. And so when you're trying to remember that this is probably when you're looking at your network, some people will have to like move down or move out of your network because you can only handle so many people in a network at a time. It's not a zero sum in particular, but there's only so much that you can do at one point. And so you're gonna have to rate and tier your connections because someone can't really be a good friend if you never talk to them ever. You have to keep working on that relationship and kind of adding value to them, and they add value to you. And so you have to be pretty selective and not transactional about it. And so that's why I always warn these community of practices with 200 people on a call is like, what are you trying to get out of this, and who are you trying to actually engage with in this in this engagement, and how do you really build like closer, deeper connections, good friends, meaningful contacts, so you can collaborate. And so, really for the public service, like you're really, you're not going to try and have meaningful connections because you already have other people in other parts of your life that are meaningful contacts as well. You're not going to be able to have like 100 or so people in the public service that you're going to be your meaningful contacts. You're really going to have to focus in on probably 10, 15, 20 that you can leverage to help move you forward. Does anyone have any pushback on that or any concerns on that?
Caleb, Mackenzie had a comment earlier, and I know Lieutenant Colonel Rathburn has something too, but I want to just mention that Mackenzie had a comment if she still wants to share.
Oh, perfect. I really appreciate that. Yeah, because I can't see the chat.
Thank you, Sylvie. I was just thinking about, I work for BC government now, which is a smaller organization. There's only 5,000 of us. But I used to work for Government of Canada where there were 290,000 and working for a central agency designing something that was for use of the entire public service. And all of this was super operative because we had to parse through like what is being done in the Government of Canada writ large. And of course, you're never going to uncover every pocket of innovation, but the intent was to lift and shift as much as we could. I find social networking is incredibly effective for crowdsourcing, right? Like I can go on a LinkedIn or back in the day, Twitter kind of campaign and I'm working on this, anyone else working on this, get 20 comments. Okay, there's your initial group to have coffee with or whatever. Pick their brain, see what it is that they're working on. Hopefully they could send you some documents. They may know others. And it's like this kind of web. Initially, the first month of any big project like that for me, or even longer potentially, is like this excavation process of trying to figure out what is already happening across whatever networks. And I leverage my own networks, but then I leverage the networks of my network as well. And it's, I keep thinking there must be a more effective way to get this done. But I haven't found anything else. So love to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. It's almost like those larger social media platform that I guess that's really is like your initial ideas of what's out there, and then that way you can probably focus your attention on creating a meaningful contact with like probably one of those 20 people that comment, and then for them to share more with you or to give more information, you have to kind of build that relationship as you're going forward. Because I guess if you haven't built that relationship, then typically it would kind of fizzle out. Like unless it's very transactional very quickly, and then you get the data and the documents from them, that'd be fantastic. But then if you want to continue having a conversation or keep leveraging that relationship, you have to work on it and focus on it, which then that would become maybe a higher up in the Dunbar's number than another person. Does that make sense? Mackenzie, or?
Oh, she's muted right now. But...
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that absolutely does. I found, yeah, it is. I can't think of any other way to say it other than this excavation process. And then we had a way, I worked for the Digital Academy in the Government of Canada. So we're working on digital topics, and generally the digital community is very open to sharing, open source and all of that. What I found effective was I invited people into different partnerships with us. So there was like a co-design partnership, which was probably the highest touch, which was the lowest number of people. They're very, very close. They're invested in the work that you're doing. There's some kind of benefit in it for them. And then there was kind of like at distance, like I could check in with them once a month, maybe run past what I was doing, kind of ask for their opinion or their input on really specific pieces. And then there was kind of a testing group as well that we invited in kind of at the end and had testing prototypes and things like that. We found that very effective as well, because we could set up at the outset, this is how we'd like to work with you if you're open to it, and this is how much time it will take, and this is what you'll get out of it at the end, kind of a thing. And that enabled us to build relationships faster, I think, that helped both parties. So
yeah, that's a great point. And actually, I was just, when I was putting this presentation last night together, I was talking to a friend who he used to have these governing boards once a week, and 70 people would show up to the governing board. And he quickly worked out after a few iterations that it was taking a lot of work to set up, and it was just getting bogged down, and it would go for 3 hours and nothing would get done. And so he broke it down into 3 different groups, where different groups had different objectives and value, and that still allowed the collaboration into those perspectives in those 3 different groups. And so it was just a bit more deliberate about it, instead of trying to get 70 people to agree on something. How do you have 8 to 12 or 15 people engage on it as well? So I think it's a fantastic point, a way to work that out.
Okay, Caleb, before you, because I agree, I think Mackenzie's examples are really helpful. And I just wanted to mention you have 3 other people who are eager to comment, so I'll let you know who they are.
Yes,
there's Lieutenant Colonel Rathburn first, and then John, who spoke before, and then it says safe, so I don't know if that's someone's name. So how about, Mr. Rathburn, did you still want to speak?
Sure, Caleb. I read your article in advance. There's interest in that. What do you think about enduring versus ephemeral connections? So position-based, for example, within your model, because a lot of times I would see more, not necessarily transactional, but that group would shift quite a bit depending on which focus areas you're in.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I mean, that's the great thing about structure and really the military, is that you would wear your trade or your rank on your shirt. So then that kind of necessitates like, okay, well, if that person's coming from that perspective and that rank, then I will trust what they have to say, and I will just do what they say. So that does allow a little bit more of that, which kind of feeds into the position. But it's still that gives you the initial in the door trust. Like, okay, well, this person's coming in, they're an intelligence trade, and they're like a lieutenant colonel, and they're saying this, so this is the answer in regards to intelligence information, so I will trust them. But if you don't, that only happens for the first little bit. If you don't continue that relationship, then you'll end up going to norms. Or like, so if there was 15 people or 30 people in a working group in a tiger team that got too big, then you would still go towards the relationships, the good friends, and the trust that you have. And even though there's probably intelligence information that you probably need, you're like, oh, well, these 3 people, I trust what they have to say, so I'm going to go with them. So I guess that's how I would answer it, is that it really helps. Positions and trades and ranks and different symbols can help buy into what people were saying very quickly, just from the essence of who they are. But then long term, if you don't continue to build out that relationship, or you either the relationship will go away, or you won't get the depth of that trust and that relationship if you don't invest in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I would interpret that as, like you're saying about the investment into relationship, you get a bit of a baseline based off positional attributes, but then you continue to have to invest, same as for other ones. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of summing up what I said. Thanks for, that's a better way of saying it. Yeah, sorry, the next step, I can't see.
It was John. Caleb, did you want to continue, or did you want to respond to the people immediately? What would you prefer?
Yeah, John, if you have an example or a comparison.
I was just going to give, I'm sort of a practical guy rather than theoretical, I guess more tactical and operational rather than strategic in many senses. So for networks, I think it depends on what the aim is and how you look at it. Holistically, the larger your network, the better, because he or she told 2 friends and so on and so on. And eventually you'll find someone that does what you need to do. If you have a specific project in mind, I would rather have a smaller group of people that know what they're talking about. If I'm looking at decision, getting something done, then I would like a network of decision makers or influencers rather than just sort of, the folks. And I was one of them that would sit in the back row there, and just kind of listen. What I tend to do now, since I just retired last September, and now I've got like 4 different jobs, I'm working more than I was in the military almost. It's kind of crazy. Is I use different platforms for different things. So, for example, given that I'm now based in the US, but working worldwide with a couple of these sort of companies, LinkedIn is the tool. If you want to find out what's going on, that's where I found this group. It's massively used in the United States, not as much in Canada, although some folks use it. For business, basically, I use LinkedIn. And you can build, I have 3 or 4 different networks on there, but I don't have many friends. I probably don't have many friends writ large, but certainly I don't have many friends on LinkedIn. If they can't do something for me, don't want to talk to them, kind of thing. Social media, in my sense, is more like, Facebook. Friends are on Facebook. Business is on LinkedIn, but that's how I look at it. What is the aim of this network? Is it the grosso modo network that eventually, Bob will link you to Sally and you really want to talk to Sally, or is it a specific task or project, or are you looking to advance a project in a certain way? That's how I tend to build those. They're functional, I guess. Over.
Yep, that's a great point, and actually that's going to be one of the next slides. It's like, what is the goal of the network? And I think that's what you're seeing as people get so busy, and they're told a network or they show up to an event, and it's kind of like Sally, same as last year, you go to the same event or what have you. But you need to have a bit of deliberateness about the event, otherwise nobody's getting anything out of it. And yeah, I would agree with that. But this is what I pitched out. This is something I'm working with right now. I don't know if it's going to work out well, but this is the kind of the 3 groups that I'm focusing on right now. Based on the Dunbar number, there's only so many people you can connect with at a certain time, and there's only so many relationships you can build. Every month, I'm focusing on a shared interest, so a one-on-one engagement, where I would email out somebody and say, hey, you have the same interest, or you're working on the same thing, or relatively the same thing as this person, you 2 should connect. And then hopefully, based on that interest, the 2 people can dig deep and solve the problem or discuss a problem together. The next group is the peer group. and that's 6 to 10 people. And that's to allow, it's supposed to be some diverse background based on experience. People are able to give feedback on, what they're working on, what the issues are, what their SMART goals are for the future. And then the diverse part of the group, it's just big enough that there should be some diversity in that group, but it's not too big that you end up not even having a chance to talk, or you share your opinion. And the way that you do that is we're actually going to nobody would actually be able to have back and forth. People would just have 8 minutes to explain their concerns or what they're working on or their SMART goals for the future. And then they would just be a Google Sheets document that everyone's sharing. And then you would just give your comments on how you would fix it or what you would work on or what, based on your experience, what you would do, so that the person that's kind of describing what they're working on can then read it and kind of understand like the 7 or 8 other people, their perspective, and learn from it. And then more importantly, other people can see how others would deal with a certain problem. So that's essentially what you're hoping from, and then I'll go into like the value of what that peer group would be as I go forward. And then the last one would be working groups. Like if you're in working groups that are larger than like 20 people, so even 25 is probably too big, then it's a little bit overwhelming. But that's an area where you can break bread and make some steel, and you can kind of connect with people. And then really you won't be solving problems in those activities because it's probably not long enough time. But what you're hoping to do is see what the different perspectives are, and then you can go out and engage with them and try and build up that relationship as well. So I think focusing smaller is better, and that's just the trend that I saw in the public. So as an example, in the Army, what I wish I had done instead is if I was working on a digital problem in my last year in the Army, I wish I had just found, I always thought that I had to go find everybody and I would go out and engage everybody. But I wish I just had found the 1 or 2 people in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, CANSOFCOM, CJOC, which I already knew who those people are. And then we would get pulled into these massive community of practices of like 100 people, and then we wouldn't be able to really collaborate. Instead, I wish we just kind of kept that peer group of 6 to 10 people where we would share what we're working on, and then people would give feedback on what they've seen, and that would have probably been more of a solid way to learn, to gain experience, to throw around ideas than what we did. So anyway, that's my proposal of as going forward of how to not make the teams or groups too big so that it ends up messing with the Dunbar number. So, which kind of feeds back to the question, like, what is the goal of your network, which is something I think that John was alluding to here, like, because you have to use the right tool or the right approach to it. And this is another question I was going to ask on the chat, but so it like when you're showing up to an event or you're showing up to a community or you're trying to actually engage with different people across the organization, you have to work out what your goal is for that. And I guess there's a bit of a feeling, a misconception out there that you can just form communities, networks spontaneously. Like you can just kind of go to an event or go to an MS Teams call or reach out, and naturally whoever you engage with is the people that will help you to solve a problem. But that misconception, obviously, that's why the word misconception is not actually true. It ends up making networks that are not useful to you or useful to your contacts because you're all homogeneous. So you probably already know each other from like university or school, or maybe you've served or worked together. But then that's not actually helpful for trying to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. So it does speak to making sure that you use certain devices or platforms to engage, but then it also speaks to making sure that you like work out what the connection is supposed to be. Like, what are you trying to get out of the connection? And so one of the things, and this is from 450, thanks very much for those guys for their recommendation. But what I've tried to do now is, because you can't, I'm not going to go scrape everyone's LinkedIn, or I'm not going to go send out surveys that nobody's going to fill out. What I want to do is just ask 2 questions for everybody what are you working on? And then just using a verb noun, they'll be able to explain it. Integrating analytics. And this really doesn't matter what community you're talking to or what network you're trying to build. But what you're hoping to do is trying to get a feel for who's out there. What are they working on that would add value? And this one's focused on digital, but it could be focused on anything. And then from there, if say you're working on integrated analytics, then maybe you get matched up with people that are also integrating analytics, or and this could be HR community practices you're working on. This could be anything, but you're trying to work out, what do everyone here want to get out of this, so that way we can match the right people, the right interests, the right workshops, or get the right diversity to add value. You might even match people if you're interested in integrating analytics. You might even match them with someone who's automating analytics, because maybe they've already integrated analytics, and so maybe they could be a mentor for you, or scaling analytics, upgrading analytics. So you'd want to, which this does two things. First of all, it matches you with someone that's kind of in the same interest as you, so they could either be a peer-to-peer, one-on-one, deeper engagement, or it could be a mentor-mentee engagement where you can learn. But then it's important that both people know, understand where you're coming from and where the other person is coming from, so you can come prepared to add value to what they're doing. Like if someone's actually automating analytics, but you're integrating analytics, if you have seen automation in your organization, or if you have examples that would add value to that person, then that's how you would show up prepared for that meeting.
Caleb, Caleb, you have a comment or contribution from Colonel SLR. And before that, there was, it says SAFE. I don't know if that's a name or an abbreviation, but that person had something to say as well. So go ahead, Colonel SLR. I don't know if I'm pronouncing properly.
No, you're good to go. It's you can call me Eric here.
Eric,
I'm just,
yes.
Glad to join the community here and understand its goodness. So Caleb, I'm with you and all that. I would offer that your previous slide with the circles, one of the things that I've been passionate about, very keen on, especially in military and I'm sure across the government and other sectors, where we've established, we designated centers of excellence for a certain sphere area. And what we have done, in my opinion, and sometimes not resource it adequately. So you try to be a center of excellence and add value and connect people like with like, and it's difficult. And centers of excellence being mandated or resourced or empowered to establish communities of practice. So I would almost say, as you build this, link it to either, color, this is good, Dunbar numbers and whatnot. How does this link to, theory and practice of communities of practice to connect people in the notions of centers of excellence, which could be very useful as well. I had a couple of thoughts, but it's not coming to me right now. But I'm loving what you're putting out here. Over. Yeah, and I mean, this is recorded, and I'm kind of hoping to present this to, so hopefully governments just steal everything of doing, if it's useful. Well, we're going to practice and test it out, and then if it adds value, then hopefully, governments can just build this inside their own organization using MS Teams or what have you. Or SharePoint or what have you, so they can track the same amount. Like instead of trying to overwhelm one community of practice that's expected to engage with hundreds of different entities or what have you. Instead, how do you enable them by creating different one-on-ones, peer groups, and then activities or break bread and make steel, so that people are getting the right amount out of the engagement. I would even say that now that we're back to the slide, break bread and make steel, I would argue that you probably can't even do that online. Like I'm going to try a few things using GatherTown and a variety of other opportunities, but I think you might actually have to do, for that activity to work properly, to work on a problem with that volume of people, you might actually have to be face-to-face in a location to do it right. So that way, not only is the activity and the problem discussed and the interests shared, but then more importantly, the side conversations can happen in an open way to allow that collaboration and that networking. And so you said it was Safi that also had a question?
Yes, I don't know how to pronounce it, safe or something, but also Matt has a comment. Matt has a contribution as well. So you're really engaging people today.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. So,
let's hear from Safe first.
Yeah, so thank you so much for allowing me to speak in here with a lot of professionals here, much better than me. So I would like to start with the Caleb's second slide that he has here, like for the goals. I think you can create a good network based on your goals first. First, if you have a goal, then you can create a good network. First, it's clear, then the network should always have like at least 8 people. Like 4 should be always be sportive, or some of them are they need to be kind of skeptic about your ideas as well, because what I call is like productive group engagement. Only the productive group engagement would only be possible if you were able to have people who have different views about the stuff. They know about the stuff that what you are going to work on or what your goals are, and they have negative views of it. For example, if you're creating something and everybody's they just agree on with you and they would say, okay, yes, we are all in with you, and then you start creating it, you might lack in innovation of it. You might lack at some place that you might be able to do something better than that. So I think in order to have a good network, you should always have like 3 people out of the whole loop that your network is based on. Like if you have 8 people, then there must be at least 2 people out of the scope that they don't know that much about your work, but they actually are kind of used as being criticizing your work. That actually helps you see the loopholes or the empty spaces that would be you can face on later on when the project completes or you launch or your work, or you may face such sort of problems later on in future. So I think that really depends on apart from the future goals or what do you call the productive group engagement and the number of people that should be almost like 8 to 10 people. That is all. Because in order to, the more ideas you would have, there is a possibility that some of them may leave, some of them may be going to interrupt the ideas, and your actual goals may divert from it. So at least you should have like a combination of 3 things: productive engagement, and then there should be a skepticism from the people who actually know the thing, and then the people that who don't know about the stuff, but they are actually being infused to the idea that you are working on. So they it's just like it's like a toddlers that who make things better than the grad business school students. So yeah, it really depends on that. That is all from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and that's exactly what the peer group is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a very diverse group of people that have coming from different perspectives, and they do this in founder organizations like Entrepreneurs Organization, where typically they would have 10 different people from different industries. They do that also because someone that's from the same industries obviously will not share as much, but then also they want different divergent perspectives, so they can kind of give you an outside look of what your idea is or what the problem you're trying to work on as you go forward. It's really it's based on experience though. It's not an opinion. You can't just say, oh, I don't like that because this is my opinion and I'm going to share it. What you're hoping to do is you're discussing is like, well, in my industry or from my background or from my department, we tried this and that and we did this as well, and this is the issues that we saw. And so, not to say that your idea won't work, but this is something definitely you should be focused on or thinking about from a different way of approaching it, just because we're a different department. So yeah, I think that's the key of the 6 to 10 people, because it's small enough that everyone's idea can be heard. But then it's big enough that there should be some different opinions in there, so it's not just groupthink saying the same thing. And you have to make sure that the team's coming from different perspectives as well. Otherwise, it won't work. So anyway, I appreciate that feedback. That's fantastic. There was one more question or comment.
It's me again, Caleb. I really like your ideas in there. They're quite important to me. I'm trying to figure this out. I've been for a while. I'm at your last slide, verbs and nouns.
Oh, you guys have the slides. Oh, okay. Whoops.
Well, yeah, we saw verbs and nouns, and I think my challenge in my little head here is I'm more and more seeing challenges in people actually meaning the same thing, even if it's two different words, right? Perhaps at the, I don't want to say technical, but the expert level that works. So an expert digital, if you got a team working on, I don't know, data to do workplace management, office space management, first thing I can think of, it can be pretty clear. But as soon as you come to people who want to collaborate on some of the conditions that set success in digital, let's say governance, policy, do you think that model works? Do you think that having those verbs analysis, have you tried it? I'm curious where you are in trying to maybe, because I like your idea of trying to simplify the language, simplify the verbose stuff, and bringing it to something that connects people together. I'm wondering if you put thought that people that are less on a specific solution and more on networking on the enabling conditions that allow those solutions to work.
Yeah, I think it would work well for the one-on-one conversation not to have those definitions. So if two people in two different departments are working on, improving policies or automating policies, or scaling policies or something, then just the fact that they're working in the general area, they might have a great discussion about it. But I would say for the activity of 15 to 25 people, because otherwise it would just be madness if you don't define the terms properly. Then I would say that would be if everyone's interested in writing better policy. That's why the 15 to 25 people came in, because they're worried about writing better policy for AI or what have you. Then you want to make sure that everyone's read the 3-page preparation of what these terms are on this discussion. Otherwise, it's going to be 25 people talking 25 different ways. And then they can also, by going through that 3-page prep, they can kind of self-select that maybe this isn't actually the right activity for me because I'm coming from a different perspective. So I'm just reading back what I would think about that, but I'm also saying that, yeah, that's fantastic. If you actually want to get into something, you have to make sure you're talking the same terms. Otherwise, I don't think that would affect the peer group of 6 to 10 people, because the diversity in the group and how different people are approaching the terms and the definitions might actually be interesting in itself. But if you're actually trying to dive into a problem or an activity together in a group of 15, then you really want to make sure that everyone's speaking the same language. Otherwise, you'd be wasting your time. What do you think of that?
Hey, Caleb, it's Sylvie. I just want to let you know you're sparking lots of great ideas in our participants. You have about 5-6 minutes before closing comments. So I just wanted to give you a chance to highlight the elements that you really want people to walk away with today.
Yes, thanks very much. Luckily, this is my last slide anyway, so that's perfect. And then the peer group, the 6 to 8, is I kind of thinking about calling it build a hive, but that's hopefully for 6 months. Those are different diverse groups of people that you're engaging once a month, and the intent of it is not really to just connect with those other people, but then hopefully they're able to connect you with other people or other ideas as well. So you're hoping that every month, if you're meeting with these 6 to 10 people, you're talking about the issues you're trying to work with, then they should be saying, based on not just your network of 150 meaningful conversations, you're able to leverage the other 9 people's meaningful connections of 150 as well. Then they should be able to say, actually, you know what? I would recommend, and this is in the Google Docs, I recommend you talk to this person, and I will vouch for you, or I will introduce you as well. And I think that'd be a great way of really expanding your network in a deliberate manner. Is that if you build out your peer group, you're building on a trust in that relationship for 6 months or maybe a year, where you get to know those 6 to 10 people, then they can start to connect you with their network that would help you go faster as well. And that's why the diverse peer group is kind of important. You can't just have 10 Army people that only know Army stuff on a call. What you would hope is different departments that have product management experience or communications experience or policy experience or implementation experience. You'd have different perspectives in that call that can kind of lead you into different connections. And so that's kind of what that peer group of 6 to 10 are. And so knowing that we're running out of time, and I want to be cognizant of that. So this is just something that I'm working on, and what I'm hoping that what you take out of this meeting is that if you're in a call next week and it's 200 people on an NMS Teams call, and you're like, why am I on this call? Or like, what am I getting out of this? Hopefully, just some of the background of Dunbar's number, some of the different circles or groups, or how do you get meaningful information out of a community? You can probably go back and maybe recommend to the person that's running that meeting to say, hey, how about we break this into groups of 10? Or how about we survey with just 2 questions of this 200 people that are in this call to see what everyone's interests are, and then they can go into their own subgroups or do one-on-ones from this. Let's not just like jump onto a call of 200 people on it where everyone doesn't share their screen and nobody's really listening, and you're just making sure that you can hear what everyone's working on to make sure they're not doing what you're doing, which that's what it ends up being. And arguably that call could just be an email. And so that's what I'm hoping that people can get out of this is that to have better expectations of what a meeting, association, connection, a network, a community of practice is, and what you need for it to really add value to the community. So if there's any other questions there, I left a couple minutes for questions. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to you, Sylvie, to do the wrap up, if that makes sense. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, we have time for maybe one question, and for sure, afterwards, when this is posted on YouTube in the AOD channel, it'll be possible to continue the conversation. So maybe one more question, I'll have some closing comments and maybe some last words from Philippe and Michael. Well, as you think of your questions, I can summarize some of the insights that I picked up. I think, Caleb, you building on what you just said, you talked about the importance of understanding the people that you want to network with, right? It's not just about what you need, but what are some of the common interests that exist with people that you might be able to connect with. And some of the comments from the group were also about the importance of diverse and divergent ideas in our network so that we can not only be supported, but also challenged. And Mackenzie talked about her own experiences in co-design and partnerships, which are really important as a way of structuring and really embedding that kind of power of networks. And one of the things you mentioned, Caleb, too, that I noted is the importance of continuing the investment in the relationships. It's not just something that happens magically. Sometimes it's great, but we need to continue our investments. And then one of the comments from Matt about connecting, about enabling conditions, not just about problem solving or decision making about specific issues, but what are the enabling conditions? So it's definitely a work in progress, this networking. We all have something to learn, and we're all part of this community of practice here. So I really thank AOD and the whole team for making it possible for us to connect in this way, even though we didn't have chat today. And while any questions before I make a couple of quick announcements?
I'm going to end on the open question, Caleb. I love what you said, and I think one thing we have to figure out is how to change the mindsets, right? Of people who see scale and scope as an argument, especially in industry. You see it all the time. Oh, I went to this event, there was 2,000 people, it was great. Okay, who do you talk to? Bring the juice, right? And nothing comes out, but it's still valued for things like, but we exposed our company, we exposed our product, we expose our organization. I hear that all the time. I think it's a bias that nobody sees, and I do see it in the military. So I look forward to more on this, honestly. I'll get in touch. Caleb.
Yeah, no, I think it's... I've started to see it more and more, and yeah, is that people are starting to move away from the big events because they kind of have to do a big event because they rented a big conference space, and so they need lots of people to show up because otherwise they can't make money from it. But I think it's going the wrong direction. And I remember I went to SAS North last October. It's a big event in Ottawa. I just walked in because nobody was checking. Otherwise, I would never have paid for it because it was like $1,500. Yeah, everyone was walking around. Nobody knew who to talk to. Everyone kind of went there because everyone heard that everyone had to go there. But you saw everybody was just kind of stumbling around trying to talk. And so this is just really my initial look at how to create some of the principles to get more out of your network. But then inevitably, there's more systems thinking to make sure that it's a great network. I'm working a lot of different aspects such as Neo4j, which is actually a mapping tool that can map different relationships to everybody. I didn't want to get into that in this conversation, and it's really not that necessary. Like, I think a lot of the things that I proposed to everyone today really could just be a chatbot, MS Teams chatbot. You know, what are you working on? Verb, noun, and then just connecting people that way. I don't think you have to be too technical, but there's definitely, as you go further forward, you can start to see relationships, strengths of relationships, and then really map out how you would engage on it. And that's something that I was working with NATO was doing. NATO did that to actually understand decision-making models, where they would understand all the different relationships of a lot of different things, and then based on if a relationship or a metric changed, how does that change a decision at the further on? So that's kind of where you can go with it. The more and more sophisticated you are with it. I just wanted to do the initial shot across the bow of like principles that you should be focused on to get more out of your connections. Thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Caleb. Are there some projects or events or anything that you're doing that you want us to pay attention to following this, your contribution today, which was great?
15 days. In 15 days, I'm just going to launch a digital uncertainty peer group. I'm going to try it out for 6 months. Either it works, which is great. If it doesn't, then I won't tell anyone I did it, and we'll just pretend it never happened. But and there's going to be groups of 6 to 10 people. Already got 10 different groups, and it's going to be within one time zone. So that way it's very easy to do your peer group. And from that core of the 6 to 10 person peer group, we'll maybe run some activities, 15 to 25, or one-on-ones where it's based on the problem. And so I'm going to try that out. And then everything I learn, I'm just going to hand over to different public service organizations, and then you can hopefully use it yourselves to build out the collaboration as I go forward. So it's on the digital uncertainty, 15 days. Tell your friends, they can all sign up for it. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's really, you got to have at least 3 years of experience of working on digital problems, because once again, in your peer group, it's based on experience. I don't want to have a bunch of people musing about, how you drive change in public service that doesn't actually change or help anybody that's on the call.
Super. A couple of AOD announcements before we go. On June 6th, the launch of the Foresight Primer for NATO members and partners. Also in June, the launch of Breakthrough Shadows of Byzantium in June, and September 25th to 27th, the annual symposium in Lisbon, Portugal. And AOD is a membership-based organization. Everyone's encouraged to join. Information on the AOD website. And the last minute to Philippe.
Thank you, Sylvie. It's been amazing, Caleb. I learned a lot, and actually it allowed me to articulate a lot of what we try to do with all of our project and the way we try to collaborate. So now I have a much smarter way to articulate it and try to lead them that way. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, Sylvie, for facilitating, chairing this session. I think that you are natural and you should do it again. That's amazing. So again, as Sylvie said, we are really a collaborative organization. Our goal, we try to help one another because it's hard to collaborate. It's hard to mobilize also design thinking, system thinking, and foresight. And we will dissolve the day is going to be easy. So I think we're in this for the long run. So please continue to support as a member or by participating to those activities. And if you would like to share, any of what you're working on, any lessons learned, you can use this Campfire platform to do that. We try to have one every month. It's amazing to connect like that with you. So thank you so much. And I look forward to see you at some of our other events.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Michael, for technical support. It's nice to see everybody. Thanks, Caleb.